Hi everyone, my name is Liron and you're listening to HRD Live Podcast. This is a show where we discuss all topics related to people leadership and for human capital. For this show we're welcoming Danielle Harmer. Hello Danielle.
Hi.
Danielle, sorry. So could you just start off by talking about your role and responsibility and who you work for?
So I look after everything to do with people at Metro Bank. I have been there since 2012, so a couple of years after we started up, but we were definitely a baby bank when I joined, with around 300 people, and we're now up to over 4,000 with 66th store opening this week in Moorgate, and we offer customers a choice, a different approach to banking, and that's primarily delivered by our people. So I've definitely got one of the best jobs in the world.
Okay. Not bragging.
Oh yeah, no one's allowed it. It's mine.
Great. So do you feel like artificial intelligence learning is positive, or does it leave a potential risk?
Are we talking about artificial intelligence in terms of, as a colleague, your learning experience using technology for that, or are we talking about artificial intelligence and the impact on work and jobs in general?
We're talking about like learning experience, that we can go into sort of the whole workforce.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that in terms of using technology for learning, you just need to think about what the learning outcome is that you want, and therefore the best way of delivering it. And it's probably actually no different to, if you think as a customer, some of the services that you use, some of them you'll choose to access digitally through your phone, online, mobile app, and others you will choose to go and experience that service depending on what it is that you want the outcome to be. I think it's the same with learning. And there's also the sort of aspect of what is your learning style. So would you rather read a book or watch a TED Talk? You as an individual, you can get information in both ways, but you might be more comfortable with getting it, through one channel or the other. So typically, if we're talking about broad experiential leadership training where learning is shared, and you want to try stuff out in the classroom and have discussions, by definition, I would say it's in the classroom, I think that is definitely something that needs personal face-to-face delivery. Coaching, so one-to-one coaching sessions, you definitely need two people. They don't need to be in the same room, although typically I think people find having conversations like this much easier when I can see your body language and I can see how you're responding to me, and it generates a much better conversation. And the same is true with any sort of learning or mentoring relationship. If it is just about giving me some information, I'm not sure a trainer necessarily in a sort of physical classroom environment delivers an awful lot of benefit to that situation. The other thing that you want to do is enable people to be able to pull on learning at a time and a place that suits them. And you can do that much better if you do it digitally. You will choose to do things, I don't know what your commute's like, but you'll choose to do things on your commute. You are probably reading through your emails, looking at some stuff, maybe watch a TED Talk, in a way that you can only do through digital learning offerings. I think that the physical and the digital together are very important.
So how do you think HR leaders and business leaders in general could communicate the perks of stepping into this digital world of artificial intelligence learning to their colleagues or to their workforce who may not seem too fond of it, or may be like quite new to the digital world?
I think it comes back to the start of the conversation we had, which is that when you ask people how they choose to bank, for example, they're going to say to you, I'll go into my branch, we call them stores, I'm going to go into my branch for certain things, I'm going to call the contact centre for certain things, I'll use my mobile app for, so I'm presuming you have a banking app, I guess you have a mobile app, I'll go online for some things that maybe the mobile app doesn't quite have the functionality to do. I might go to another advice. It's exactly the same with how you interact with your own level of personal development and knowledge and skills, which is what's an easy way for me to do this? And as long as the organisation can offer that, then great, because you can do it at a time you want, in the place you want. I think the challenge for organisations sometimes is twofold. Firstly, that the assumption from colleagues can be that they are being pushed to a cheaper channel rather than the right one. And, with human beings, we can be a little cynical about that. Don't tell me it's the best when it's also the cheapest. So be transparent with me. And then I forgot what the other thing is that I was going to say, which is really helpful.
Well, if you remember it, then be sure
I will come back to you.
Yeah, come back to it. So for your personal preference, what aspects of artificial intelligence are you most excited for?
Well, I mean, we were talking about this just before we started. Artificial intelligence, in theory, is machine learning, right? Which is that the technology learns and improves as it goes. I don't see an awful lot of that in training yet, but clearly, if you can have some sort of a learning experience that responds to my start point as a delegate versus yours, if we both go on a program to learn about something, and very early on in the experience, the program can understand that my level of knowledge clearly is far less impressive than yours and gives us a different learning experience as a consequence. Using technology in that way is fantastic. So start with, okay, where is everybody at? And now I can give you the information at the right pace for you in the right way. Similarly, if it's going to understand my learning style, my preferred learning style versus yours, and again, tailor the interaction and the training to how I best like to learn, then that's absolutely fantastic. That's a much better way of delivering learning for and to people. I think we're probably a way away from that sort of thing, but it will improve all the time. I mean, I know that certainly in education now, there are some systems that can actually mark essays. And it's one of these interesting things about technology where the article I read, educators and students are quite anxious about it because they go, how can it be as well judged and fair as an individual marking the essay? But actually, if you teach the system to look out for the right words and what constitutes the correct answer, it's going to be a far more rational response to whatever the learning outcome is than perhaps you or I might be, because we immediately make judgments. One of the fantastic things about technology is that it is more accurate and it removes bias, depending on how the system's built, in a way that human beings just can't. So I think there's lots of positive ways to look at using technology more in learning, which need development.
Mm-hmm. So you talked a lot about the positives and the exciting things looking forwards in the world of AI. But what would you say are the biggest challenges? Because would you say that it's people's scepticism of AI, artificial intelligence?
And I've remembered my second point, which I'm very pleased with myself about. So I think the scepticism is driven by it's cheaper and that's why you want to do it. And the second bit of scepticism is driven by, and because I can do it in my own time, actually you're going to invade my time. Rather than it being, I can do it whenever I like, and that's at a time that works for me, within working hours or not. But it's my personal choice. I think that's primarily where the skepticism comes from. And people like people. Probably the most overused phrase in history, but people like people. So a lot of the feedback we get from the courses, the face-to-face courses we do at Metrobank, is that the delegate experience and the relationship with their trainer really matters to them. And you don't want to underestimate the value of that. But if you're putting people into a classroom environment, the trick has got to be do the preparation in a sensible way, maybe using technology and remote learning better. And then once they're in the classroom environment, do the stuff that has to be done face to face in that environment where it adds the most value. I think it's the skepticism is probably about the way we describe the benefits of it, and people worrying that it's all about saving money and kind of taking time from people. When actually for certain interactions, I think it's going to do a better job than a trainer could.
Cool. So how do you think HR leaders can prepare for these changes?
I think there's a bit of just getting back to basics on learning, which is, what's the purpose of the interaction with the delegates? What is it that you want them to know? What's the best way of delivering it? How best are you going to prepare them for it? Where are people coming from to do it? And therefore, how do you deliver that as a learning experience from start to finish, including preparation, actual learning, follow-up, embedding learning, and make sure that you're considering all the ways of interacting with people, making sure that it's the best learning experience and using the technology available to support that, rather than how can we make our training cheaper, and how can we make it quicker, and how can we make it easier, and how can we save travel costs. Of course, have those things in mind as sensible commercial thinking, but start with how do we use this to deliver the best possible learning interactions and make things better for people. And if you look at it from you go back to being a customer of a retailer or a bank, make it as frictionless and easy as possible for me to get what I want the outcome to be. Start with that as the purpose. And then I think everything follows through naturally.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So do you feel like artificial intelligence could develop their human interactions so much so that they could maybe replace certain jobs types at all?
I think artificial intelligence, there's a lot of conversation about this in HR specifically. 2 years from now, 50% of jobs will be gone because of artificial intelligence. Actually, it's probably slightly longer timescales, and also it's not jobs, it's work. So if you look at the work that anybody does, there will be tasks within that can be automated, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I think organisations need to remember they actually have we have some control over this. We have choice and control, which is if as an organisation I can take 10% of the work out of that job and automate it, am I going to use that 10% to have a 10% smaller workforce, or to give customers a 20% better experience? And of course, the truth is somewhere between the two. But it's our choice as to what we automate. And back to the point of automation gives better accuracy, it's more objective, it's less biased, customers can access it when they want to. And if I can enter a chat conversation during an online training course with a chatbot that is helping me in a way that an individual could, and I can't tell the difference, I'm not really sure there's that's too much of an issue, and I think we should welcome those sorts of improvements, because chatbots don't get tired, they don't go for lunch, they don't need comfort breaks. They're there and available. They just need to be invested and developed in a way that's supporting the learning experience or the customer experience for that matter.
Mm-hmm. So in your personal opinion, do you feel like there are any specific industries or sectors who may be a lot more precautious to adopt these digital changes?
I think there are types of work that are much more relationship-based than others. So would I want to go and see my doctor and engage with a person, or am I happy for some sort of self-diagnosis on an online tool? Actually, depending on you as an individual, you might want to start with the self-diagnosis. But there are definitely some interactions where you need humanity, and if you need humanity in interaction, you probably need a person in it. So in the Amazon warehouse, does the robot do a better job of finding items, stacking boxes, putting them on shelves than a human being? Probably. It doesn't mind about the weight. Do many human beings really enjoy that work? Many probably not. That's a perfect example of, great, well, Amazon can use that resource to focus better on customer service or on innovation in a way that that technology perhaps can't. Whereas there's other work that you definitely want a person at the other end. The one that's in my head is giving birth. Probably not one you're particularly familiar with, but I definitely wanted to see a midwife standing next to me and not a robot.
Yeah, I can relate. I can understand that. Why you would.
But you think about it in hospitals. We use technology and people in close in partnership, because 20 years ago, if you were in hospital, someone was coming in and taking your pulse every now and then, and your blood pressure and checking your temperature. Well, now, if you're in hospital, there's a thing on the end of your finger that is monitoring your temperature and your blood pressure and your pulse. And if there's an issue, you're alerted to it. And because we're comfortable with that sort of technology, we're not as anxious about it. I think there's a bit of scaremongering that goes on with technology and the jobs it's going to take away. As human beings, there is no doubt that the world of work is going to change. But we're going to live longer as well, hopefully. So we have a responsibility to make sure that we're thinking about a sort of, lifelong of careers rather than education until you're about 20. Work from about 20 to about 60, and then retire from about 60 to about 80, because a lot of people are going to live to 100 or more. There's a brilliant book by Linda Grattan called The 100-Year Life. And actually, therefore, education till 20-ish, work till 60. You can do the simple maths. If you're going to live for another 40, 50 years, financially that doesn't work. It's not going to work. So therefore, from a pension and a retirement savings perspective, we all just need to think a little bit more flexibly about what it is that we want to do with our lives and how we navigate around the world of work over a longer period, and learning and evolving as we go. I have 3 children, and I think the responsibility of the schools that my children go to is to teach my children how to learn. Of course, they teach them facts as well, because we still use examinations to check people's understanding. But actually, I think we need to make sure that we're able to learn as human beings so that we can grow and develop and, move around, and not just have a educate, job for life, potentially one employer previously, and, retired for 20 years, because that's just not what the world of work is going to look like. And as the world of work is going to evolve and change, we need to be ready to flex with that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So with this world of work changing and evolving through digital aspects and through people getting older and working for longer, do you feel like the culture's improving, or maybe just changing in general? Like how do you see it? How have you seen it changing in the past few years?
I think I think culture in workplaces generally is much better now. Mm-hmm. Certainly, when I was first at work was much more formal, and people were almost expected to be a work persona in work and then whoever you were outside work. I think everybody accepts that enabling people to be the best of themselves and bring all of themselves to work gets the best out of them in and outside work. One of my least favourite phrases is work-life balance, because work is part of life. So it's your life balance. So generally, I think people understand now that it's about leadership and followership and growing people and having a clear purpose that people feel positive about in the organisation and can move towards, and therefore sort of control, management, hierarchy doesn't do that. So I think the culture of work generally has improved. And interestingly, there are a lot of conversations about millennials and Gen Y and Gen X. And I'm constantly being told that millennials want more from work than I do. I'm not sure that's true, actually. I think I might have tolerated less positive and adult working environments, when I was sort of in my early 20s. But that doesn't mean I should tolerate it now, or that anyone should, actually. And if we have an adult working environment where everybody can see how AI and digital can improve customer experience or efficiency or learning, then, and it's an adult environment, then we just work together to grow and flex and adapt with that. And, I think modern working cultures in most of the organisations that I see encourage that much more than this sort of, command and control. That's your task. Do it and then go home. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what skills and experience you bring from outside work. I just want you to do your job. I think everybody knows now human beings work much better in a positive environment aligned to a positive purpose.
So that's a positive to see then.
Yeah.
Good. So touching upon your sort of role at Metro Bank, what do you think are your biggest challenges, short term or long term?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge, the thing that I sleep pretty well, but the thing that potentially might keep me awake at night is culture. So we have a very simple philosophy at Metro Bank, which is that how our people behave is what drives the service experience, and that's our unique offering for customers, is a different kind of banking with a great service experience. So therefore, the thing that matters most in our organisation is our culture. And culture is made up of a million different things. Everything that you do is impacting on culture. Everything that you say as a leader or as a colleague, how you behave in a team or leading a team, how you behave with customers, all of that is influencing the culture, what's okay to do around here because of how people respond to that. And so the thing I worry most about, the biggest challenge we have at Metro Bank is, as we grow, is to strengthen our culture so that people see that the way to behave with customers is to provide a brilliant service experience, to surprise and delight them, so that they, it sounds quite an emotional way of describing it, but they love us. And they can't do that unless we love them, and look after them. And doing that is it's a very positive thing, which makes it easy. But we're in a regulated environment. And sometimes what we're asking people to do doesn't feel very sort of, British. It feels a bit warmer than that. So it can be a challenge. And, how do you have the rules and regulations that you need to have around being a bank and being entrusted with people's money without those getting in the way of focusing on just doing the right thing for the customer? And it's an interesting line to tread.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like artificial intelligence and the digital transformations are impacting that positively?
I think for customers, they impact service positively because they give customers choice. And it's very important that as an organisation, we say to customers, interact with us how you choose to. So, of course, if you do a payment on the mobile app, it's more efficient than if you come into a store and do it. But you might want to do it in a store, and that's fine. Of course, you can do that. So I think from a service experience, as long as we focus on offering the customer choice, it's very positive. From a colleague experience, maybe I'm a little overly positive about this, but the more that we can automate routine tasks that typically in an organisation that handles money and numbers require accuracy and controls and systems and processes, in my view, the more interesting and enriched the jobs become that work sits as part of, because rather than checking payments to make sure they're right, you're contacting customers to confirm that everything's done. And currently we're so busy checking, we might not have the time to do the warm follow-up support call. So I think it used wisely and sensibly is a great thing.
Great, cool. Well, thank you for your time.
That's okay. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and thank you for listening to HRD Live Podcast. Make sure to stay tuned on social media to make sure that you listen to this podcast and check back next week for more.